Gena Lopez, and I'm here to talk about zero tolerance policies for Education 705. Here's a little bit about zero tolerance policies. Zero tolerance policies are typically policies that have a predetermined consequences for offenses while at school. The disciplinary action is quick and sometimes harsh. These zero tolerance policies came from the GFSA, which is the Gun-Free School Act of 1994, and that legislation was brought about and signed by President Clinton to try to minimize weapons on school campuses. The major players impacted by the policy are educators, parents, students, and the society at large. The educators are the teachers, administrators, and districts. And the parents have a stake in the conversation because they send their children to school, expecting them to be safe and learn. And students come to school so that they can learn, and they also expect to be safe. Whereas the larger society is impacted by those who may be out and about when they're not supposed to be, or if they're impacted negatively by zero tolerance policy. The competing imperatives are the right to a free and appropriate education as well versus the rights for others. The right to a free and appropriate education. Students who are suspended or expelled because of the zero tolerance policies will typically be sent out into the world on their own devices, and when they come back to school, they're not given makeup work, they fall behind, and then they're further disenfranchised by the process or by the policy. The rights to others, on the other hand, those students have the right to come to school to learn, not to be afraid, not to be victimized, and they have a right to be safe. The rights of others, what zero tolerance policies add? Nationally, there's been a decrease in fear at school, weapons on campus. The zero tolerance policies were meant to be a deterrent for gang violence as well as gun violence on school campuses. And it was intended to keep students, teachers, staff, and the schools safe. It was also intended as an unbiased approach to discipline. What zero tolerance policies cost? There's been an increase of expulsions and suspensions on campuses. There have also been some randomly applied offenses, ambiguous interpretation, automatic and harsh discipline for minor infractions, absolution of teachers and administrators of responsibility for dealing with problem students, and it displaces troubled students from a controlled to an uncontrolled environment. So with the controlled and uncontrolled environment, again, that school is controlled. We can monitor students, what they're doing, their activities. We can make sure that they're learning and that they are in this controlled environment. When students are suspended, they're sent out into the world, into an uncontrolled environment, and they typically will get an education that we may not want them to, the wrong kind of education. As far as the absolution for teachers with responsibility, under the zero tolerance policy law, because there are predetermined consequences, if a student is deemed problem in the classroom, teachers can just send them out with a discipline slip, and they may or may not have to see them again. More cost. Racial disproportionality in implementation serves as a pipeline from juvenile court system to prison. It further marginalizes disenfranchised groups. It creates overpopulation of Black and Latino students who are suspended and expelled in comparison to their white counterparts. It reinforces negative stereotypes of historically marginalized groups. It facilitates equal treatment in an unequal society or educational environment, and it lacks due process. For example, if a student or even a certain group of students are considered problem students, it can reinforce negative stereotypes in the minds of students as well as teachers and administrators. As far as the equal treatment in an unequal society, what's not taken into consideration is that a student's background. They could come from low socioeconomic backgrounds, they could come from foster homes, they could have custody issues. There's 1,000 different reasons why they may behave or act the way that they do. However, zero tolerance policies don't take those different things into consideration. And it also lacks due process, the ability for students to speak on their own behalf. Now, some of the laws that concern zero tolerance policies, Goss versus Lopez. Lopez, not Gena Lopez, another Lopez. In this case, it was deemed that students do have constitutional rights for their own school campuses, and they do have the right to due process. The Individuals with Disabilities Act, that states that students can't fall under zero tolerance policies if they have a diagnosed disability. Unfortunately, several students, particularly students of color, do not have those diagnoses. Therefore, they are penalized with zero tolerance policies, even though they could potentially fall under this act. Seal versus Morgan. In Seal versus Morgan, the court said that if a student was unaware that they were in violation of zero tolerance policies, that they would be free from discipline. For example, a young man in this case, he had a pocket knife in his car because a friend had left it, but he didn't know. And when he drove on the school campus, he was immediately disciplined. However, the court said that because he didn't know, he had no prior knowledge of the offense, that he was not in error. However, in the following case, the Bundick versus Bay City Independent School District, they contradicted the previous case, and they said that even if you didn't know that you were in violation, that you were still responsible, and therefore you could be disciplined. The perspectives. The ethical perspective for this dilemma is justice's fairness. And the Christian perspective comes from Proverbs 21 and 21 and Psalms 82 and 3, which talk about how even in the scriptures that someone's background would be taken into consideration. For example, in Psalms, it says that we are to defend the poor and fatherless and do justice to the afflicted and needy. That's considering their background. As for the Proverbs, it says that he that followeth after righteousness and mercy findeth life, righteousness and honor. It's honorable to show mercy, and that's according to the scripture. Some of my recommendations or my resolution strategy are that a threat assessment be conducted upon violation, so that we can understand, okay, what happened, what's going on. Is this a real threat, or is this just one of those things that happen? Principals should use their discretionary power. Due process for and student appeal. Students should have the opportunity to speak on their own behalf and appeal the process if they feel that they don't agree or if they've been wronged. Support staff should be part of the process. Teachers should be empowered through professional development to know when there is an issue, to know how to deal with students who may be a problem student. Law complaints from teachers and from students, because a teacher may have a pattern where they're constantly sending the same student or the same types of student in for discipline, or a student may have developed some sort of pattern where they're having the same issues in the same class, in the different classes, excuse me. And schools should work with stakeholders toward an equitable distribution of discipline. It shouldn't just be students of color or those who are marginalized, historically marginalized in this society. Discipline should be distributed based on the offense and based on the background of the offender. These are my resources. Thank you very much.